You hear the name Enron, and what comes to mind? For most of us, it's a byword for corporate greed, for a scandal so big it literally changed the rules of the game.
But here's the crazy part. Before Enron became the villain, it was the absolute hero. I mean, for 6 years straight, Fortune magazine called it America's most innovative company. They were the poster child for the new economy, a true titan of Wall Street.
So the big question is, how? How did this company, at the absolute pinnacle of its power, just completely implode, seemingly overnight, into what was then the biggest bankruptcy in American history?
To really get how it all fell apart, we've got to go back and see how it got so huge in the first place. This story begins with Enron's transformation from a very old-school, boring business into something, well, something totally new.
See, Enron didn't start out as some high-flying tech company. It was formed in 1985 from a merger of gas pipeline companies. Yeah, think giant metal tubes running under the ground. It was a stable, predictable, and frankly, kind of dull business.
But then this guy, Jeffrey Skilling, comes along, and he has this revolutionary idea. Why should we just move the gas? Why not trade it? And just like that, they morphed into an energy bank. They created these really complex financial tools called derivatives and started trading energy futures just like they were stocks. Suddenly, they weren't a pipeline company anymore. They were a Wall Street firm based in Houston.
And all that financial wizardry, well, it opened the door for what was basically one giant magic trick. A trick that let Enron hide billions of dollars in debt right out in the open.
Okay, so the first ingredient in this recipe for disaster was something called mark-to-market accounting. And here's the wildest part. It wasn't even technically illegal at first. Skilling actually talked the SEC into letting them use it. And what it did was let Enron book all the potential future profits from a deal as real income on the day the deal was signed. So let me break that down. Imagine Enron signs some 20-year energy contract. Normally, you'd record the profit as it comes in each year. But with mark-to-market, they could just estimate what they thought they'd make over the entire 20 years and bam, put that huge number on the books for this quarter. It was the perfect way to create the illusion of massive instant growth.
But, just faking profits wasn't enough. They also had to hide all their real losses. And that brings us to the second piece of the puzzle, special purpose entities, or SPEs. These were the brainchild of the CFO, Andrew Fastow. He created hundreds of these shell companies, little ghost corporations, whose only job was to be a dumping ground for all the debt and failing projects Enron didn't want anyone to see.
So what you ended up with was Enron basically running two completely different companies at the same time. There was the one the public saw, this powerhouse with incredible profits and unstoppable growth. And then there was the reality, hidden away in those shell companies, a mountain of debt and projects that were just bleeding cash.
Now you're probably thinking, how did nobody on the inside say anything? How did no one blow the whistle? Well, this is how. Enron had this brutal performance review system called rank and yank. Every single year, the employees ranked in the bottom 15% were fired, period. It created this incredibly cutthroat culture where if you dared to question the numbers, you could be out of a job.
But a house of cards that big, it can't stand forever. And when it finally started to fall, it all came down with breathtaking speed in the second half of 2001.
The first real crack appeared because of one simple question. Analysts and investors started looking at Enron's super complicated reports and realized they couldn't figure out the most basic thing. How was this company actually making money? And it turned out nobody could give them a straight answer.
And then the dominoes just started toppling one after another incredibly fast. In August, Jeff Skilling suddenly quits, which you can imagine sent everyone into a panic. By October, the SEC is investigating and Enron has to admit, oh yeah, we kind of made up hundreds of millions of dollars in profit. By December 2nd, it was all over. Enron filed for bankruptcy.
The scale of the wipeout was just staggering. At its absolute peak, Enron stock was trading for over $90 a share. By the end of 2001, you couldn't even get $1 for it. It was a complete and total annihilation of value.
And look, the stock price is one thing, but the real tragedy here was the human cost. It was devastating. While the top executives had cashed out their stock for millions of dollars, thousands of regular employees lost everything. An estimated $2 billion in their 401k retirement accounts, all tied up in Enron stock, just gone, vanished into thin air.
The collapse of Enron wasn't just another bankruptcy. It was so profound that it sent massive shockwaves through the entire corporate world, forcing a huge reckoning that we're still dealing with today.
And let's be clear, Enron didn't do this alone. Their accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, wasn't just asleep at the wheel, they were actively helping to cook the books. When the Fed started closing in, employees were famously told to shred tons of documents. The scandal didn't just kill Enron, it took down Arthur Andersen with it, one of the biggest accounting firms in the world. Gone, just like that.
The public was absolutely furious, so Congress had to act. In 2002, they passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, the biggest corporate reform in generations. It changed everything. Suddenly, CEOs had to personally sign their financial reports. No more, I didn't know. It forced companies to have better fraud prevention and made sure auditors were actually independent.
So what about the guys who ran the whole show? Well, Chairman Ken Lay was convicted of fraud but died of a heart attack before he could even be sentenced. The CEO, Jeff Skilling, ended up serving 12 years in federal prison. And the CFO, Andrew Fastow, the guy who built the shell companies, he cooperated with the investigation and got 6 years.
Which brings us to the big, lingering question at the end of all this. Enron proved that innovation without integrity is really just a faster way to get to a disaster. It showed us that if a system is complicated enough, you can hide almost anything, for a while. So you have to wonder, have we really learned the lessons of Enron? Or are we just waiting for the next smartest guys in the room to come along and turn out the lights?